Hi there, and welcome to the Empowered Nutrition Podcast. I'm so happy to welcome Ashley. I apologize. I should have asked you. Is it Dwyer? Dwyer? How do you say your name?
Dwyer.
Dwyer. I apologize. Ashley Dwyer. Dr. Ashley Dwyer. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hello, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And don't worry, the last name happens all the time.
It's so short. It kind of caught me off guard. Like I always ask when people have long names, I'm like, oh, your name looks easy. And then I try to read it. I'm like, actually, yeah, got it now. Okay, cool. Well, quickly, I'm going to read your bio. It's amazing. So, Dr. Ashley Dwyer is a pharmacist, an ACE-certified health coach, a former NPC athlete who, after going through a slew of her own health issues due to extreme lifestyle habits, left the traditional Western medical model to start her own company and really help others through holistic healing. Her team is Team BDN Coaching, and they specialize in holistic nutrition, macro tracking and metabolic restoration, individualized fitness plans, accountability, and community, helping women eat more, yes, and reach their health goals. Dr. Ashley is also certified in plant-based nutrition, health mindset coaching, and functional nutrition and metabolic science. Her goal is to help as many individuals as she can feel their best and reverse years of metabolic adaptation. Welcome, Ashley. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Yay, me too.
Well, I mean, let's start with like the big thing here, which is like, hey, you're a pharmacist. And so that's obviously a lot of expensive school and like a well-paid field. And it sounds like you left that to start your own company. So that's obviously a big moment. Maybe you can share a little more details about how that came about.
I did. And I will be honest, I am usually not like the risk taker. If you would have told me 5 years ago that I'd be an entrepreneur, I'd laugh in your face. So like pharmacy was, you go to school, you graduate, you get a job, you're done, right?
Yeah.
So I've always loved healthcare and helping people. And I realized, while I was in pharmacy school, I started doing the bodybuilding competitions. And I don't know if you're familiar with those, but they're not the healthiest.
No.
Ones, right?
No.
The science of the nutrition and how to like coerce your body into doing things and the fitness, like I fell in love with that industry.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to quit pharmacy school because I had already done a year and what is that, like 30 grand at that point.
Yeah.
Like, we're still going to get the career. We're still going to get the degree. And I'll use the information I'm learning with my patients.
Yeah.
Well, I chose to do retail, and retail is retail is soul crushing. There is not a lot of time to implement change, to talk to customers. It's become a really big like clinical thing, and even MTMs that you're supposed to do, you don't have time to do them. There's no help. So it was just like very morally, like I was burnt out, mentally, physically, all of that. And then going through my own health issues that weren't like super severe, but at the time it was kind of like, what is going on with my body, right?
Mm-hmm.
I realized that everyone just kind of hands out Band-Aids. Like we all just hand out pills as Band-Aids and medications as Band-Aids for a lot of things that can be corrected with proper lifestyle adjustments. And so it was just an extreme distaste that made me change. I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah. Good for you. You like went with your heart on it and just dug in. And it sounds like you were having some health problems around that time as well.
So I was 4 bodybuilding competitions later, and loving the way that I looked, even though it wasn't sustainable. You're eating very, very low calorie. I'm training 6 to 7 days a week. It was like the time of rest days are for the week, right? Like we don't do rest days. High stress pharmacy environment. I really burnt out my adrenals, like tore up my thyroid, and my sex hormones were all perimenopausal. My insulin and glucose was everywhere. So I basically gave myself like subclinical hypothyroidism at one point. Now that I know what I know now, I wish I could have just done lifestyle adjustments and fixed it myself, but Western medicine, I was immediately thrown on thyroid meds, and now it's kind of a difficult journey to get off of those, right? Yeah. So that's kind of why I'm so into lifestyle changes. Don't do what I did. Like, listen to me, please.
So it sounds like you're not coaching people down to like 2% body fat.
Oh my gosh, no. I don't work with competitors. I don't work with anything that has to do with competition. And To be honest, if you come to us eating in a calorie deficit, like the first thing we're going to do is pump your calories up. Like we're going to reverse diet you and
love it.
Restore your metabolism.
Love. Tell me kind of your target audience. So like, who do you work with the most and what are the problems that they're hoping to solve?
You know what's crazy? I think even you'll probably say the same, is it's changed since I've started. So we've been in business now for 3.5 years. And like my original target was just people who I was originally helping. Like that's how I got started too, was just with brides and grooms. So originally my company was called The Big Day Nutrition, which is where you get
yeah. Cool.
And then I was like, nope, I want to start doing this. And so now we rebranded to Team BDN, and now our target client demographic is like women from 25 to 55 per se. Like we do work with some menopausal women. There's outliers everywhere, but who just have a long history of fad dieting, chronic dieting, you know, not able to lose weight. We do work with a lot of PCOS and hypothyroid patients, a lot of insulin resistance patients, basically metabolic compensation patients or clients. And that's who we work with. So basically, like when you can't do the diet and exercise anymore or nothing else is working, you come to us and we teach you how to do it sustainably.
Awesome. And where are you all located?
So we're located all over. I'm located in South Florida, so near Fort Lauderdale, but we're a complete remote coaching service. So we help people everywhere.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, cool. And then tell me about some of the common like traps that you've seen people fall into when they come into your coaching programs. What are some things that they've been doing that you think, aside from like under eating on their calories, what are some things that you'll often work on with them?
We definitely have to reintroduce the mindset that carbs are not the enemy. So under eating carbs, not eating enough carbs. We have to work on mindset is a big one. So the all or nothing mindset, kind of like if I'm going to eat this, I'm going to eat all of it. And, you know, the labels of foods being good and bad, you know, off limits, things like that. Compensatory behaviors. So if we go out and eat a bad meal, something like that, getting up the next day and having to immediately work it off or do extra cardio or cut carbs the next day. Those are just like a handful, but then also the extreme kind of getting over that we need to eat more normally. Like maintenance is where we're supposed to be at, not in a chronic deficit. So balancing those stress levels.
Okay, I love that. And then other stressors, it sounds like we're talking a little bit offline about like exercise and what do you like to see there?
So I'm a huge fan of strength training. So just weight training, you know, lower intensity, not HIIT style, just basic bodybuilding type of strength training. I think it is the best for putting on lean muscle mass, like using a progressive overload type of protocol. Because I hear a lot that like, I want to get toned, I want to put on muscle, but then we're doing a lot of endurance activities or we're doing a lot of things that aren't going to promote that. So yeah, I really love weight training, which I know can be a little intimidating, but.
Well, we think alike. All I ever do is lift. And I feel like I'm always trying to find ways to help people get going with that.
Yeah.
I don't know what your tips and tricks are of like, how do you get these women in the weight room actually weightlifting?
So we'll start out with more of a, you know, if they want to start with a home workout first, we'll do a little home workout so they can get comfortable with some of the movements.
Yeah, like calisthenics.
And then we'll do machines, and then we'll kind of gravitate towards like dumbbells. You can go in the dumbbell area. We can start getting comfortable with barbells. I will say, even though I'm a remote online coach, and I think online coaching 100% has its place, there's nothing like getting like comfortable in a weight room besides having like a personal trainer there with you or someone to work out with to show you those things. Like that's how I started in the weight room, and it was really helpful. I don't think it's necessary. I just think it's kind of invaluable at that point. I don't know how you.
Well, I think, I agree. And I think sometimes it is necessary. Like if they're deconditioned and they have like potentially like problems that they might even need like a physical therapist for. But with
checks,
so, and because we do have our practices like hybrid, so we have some about half in person, half virtual, and so I'm always thinking about how do you get somebody connected with somebody that can help them one-on-one, like where they are, rather than just tell them to go out and find a good trainer, but then you risk that they don't get a good trainer. Right. I feel like that's a difficult sticking point.
Yeah, it is. And then you have the trainer who's also wanting to like do macros or diet, even though they shouldn't. And then the numbers they come back with are like
crazy.
I have a horror story, yes, from a client, but one trainer gave my client like 356 grams of protein to eat.
Yeah, I've actually seen that this month. Yeah.
I was like, what?
It was like a 115-pound woman.
Oh, well, this wasn't, but I was like, still, what is that? 300 grams of protein? No way.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you going to pay the bills when she has like renal failure?
Right? That's what I was saying. Like, hello, kidney issues. No way.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, speaking of macros, let's just get into it with that. I think that there's quite a lot of people who might think that macros are sort of like, here's some myths that I think are perceptions that people might have about macros of like, I think Instagram kind of like can promote this perception that like, oh, you could, if you're on macros, that means that you are just going to like not care about food quality. You're just going to eat whatever junk you want. As long as the numbers add up, you're good.
Right.
So I'm curious to hear what you think about that.
Of that one specifically?
Yeah.
So that is a big thing because I think a couple of years ago when like IIFYM was introduced. So
exactly. Yeah.
Right? And people were becoming famous for making recipes that included absolutely junk food, but were
hitting their macros.
Their macros, right? So I think that macros does a beautiful job of flexibility, right? Like you can still have your favorite foods if it fits those numbers, but ultimately nutrient dense will always outweigh less nutrient dense, right? So we try and get away from like good and bad foods, but obviously you're going to feel better, perform better, get better results if you're eating less inflammatory foods and better ingredients and hitting your macros with more whole foods. And I will say, I'm not going to mention any names, but the one person I really know who was doing recipes for that has since kind of cleaned up his ingredients, which I'm very happy about. So I was like, oh my God, this looks terrible. If people all the time.
Yeah.
So it lets you have a balance because to be honest, we're all going to have that vice or that something. Like I have chocolate every single day. I enjoy tequila, like French fries are my favorite cheat food. I know these things aren't healthy for me, but I also know that completely cutting them out is going to do more mental issues, like more, it's going to push me back mentally and make me crave it more than if I just include it into some of my days. Right.
Yeah.
So it kind of helps learn moderation a little bit.
Yeah. I find that when you work with people a lot, what you learn is that people are complex in their thinking. And so I find a lot of what you're talking about to be true in the sense of like, let's say I came out with like, okay, look, macros are a harmful dieting practice that's disordered. Let's say I came out with that thinking. And so I'm just going to have people eat only whole natural foods and not any tracking. Well, then you're kind of in the realm of like the extreme end of that might be something like a Whole30 where you eat like ultra clean for 30 days. There's no tracking.
Right.
Is that healthy? Because it's not sustainable. You can't go to a party and enjoy your kid's birthday cake or whatever. I think that's unhealthy in its own right. And so then you're kind of like, okay, well, let's just teach people moderation, where like they eat mostly healthy foods and have where they just don't eat healthy foods sometimes. But then you get into this kind of like diet thinking of like, well, then I'm going to call it like a cheat meal. And now I'm shaming myself and I'm like, it blow it out of proportion in my mind, thinking the day's ruined. So then I go nuts for the rest of the day. And then it's so over that I go nuts forever. Yeah. And like, there's this hyperbolic thinking that people are kind of trained into. And so I think that can be great as an end goal to get people to where they eat intuitively. But I find that a lot of times, very paradoxically, if people are tracking macros initially, it'll help them to kind of see the scope of like, okay, yeah, you had some, in your example, you had some French fries when you went out to dinner. You put it in your tracker and you see that you can still hit your targets for the day. It prevents that hyperbolic thinking of like everything's ruined and it's just time to like give up. And it's just like, oh no, I just fit that in. But it's not the goal is to not be like relying on those foods completely as your diet, but it's not that big of a deal when you have some of it.
And I think, no, 100%. And you just said something that I preach all the time. And because I hear the myths or the controversy topics all the time, right? Like tracking is disordered eating. You're not freely like honoring your cue. Like it's just different things, right? Like you hear the different.
Let's talk about the cues. Go on. But yeah, let's come back to that.
Okay. And I will say that the goal, and maybe other coaches or other influencers or whoever you're following on social media don't think the same way I do, but I'm not teaching macros so that you're on it forever and that you're stuck to a food scale and that you're, you have to bring that to a restaurant. Like I will never, ever have someone bring a food scale to a restaurant. No way.
Yeah, no.
But what it does, like what you just said, it brings such a self-awareness to the foods you're choosing, how much you actually need to eat, what encompasses, like what things look like nutritionally. Because if you ask most people, they're going to think peanut butter is a great protein source, and it's not. It's a good fat source with protein, right?
Yes.
So when you start tracking, you see like, oh, that's a lot more than I thought, or that's this, like look at the fiber in this. So it brings more self-awareness to the food you're eating and how to put together meals, and then how much you actually need, because most women are under eating. And then it leads into intuitive eating, because I think it's very hard to just like start intuitively eating when you have emotional ties to food, you stress eat, you don't have hunger cues, like kind of what I was going with.
Yeah.
It's hard to shut that off or shut that on if you have no idea where to even start. So
you've never even seen what correct eating looks like or tried it. And so for someone to be told like, hey, just start eating intuitively and correctly now is really impossible. It's like if you told me to like draw a picture of what it's like on Venus. I've never been there, you know, and so I don't know what it looks like. And so that's how I use macros too, is like it's a training wheel. It's like a training learning time of like learning what a day of eating should look like that makes you thrive. And then let's start to taper you off on the tracking, because I agree, not healthy to be doing it ongoing forever. It's not, that's problematic in its own right. And then on the cues, I like something you put in your, bio. It said, metabolic restoration. I use a lot of the phrase metabolic healing. So I'm curious. I think we're like-minded, but tell me what you mean by like metabolic restoration.
So majority of clients that we have come through consults or that we help really have cases of metabolic adaptation, and just where your metabolism's adapted to under eating, energy conservation. We have really big like blood sugar dysregulation. We have poor sleep habits, really high stress. So just everything is kind of out of balance, right? And I think that we forget it. Yes, it's calories in versus calories out, but if your body isn't running like efficiently, or we're not fueling ourselves properly, like thinking of it as an engine, we're not going to get the results we want no matter what. So the metabolic restoration is kind of coming together with all these different areas and then healing, like you said. So we all have our own terminology, right? But getting it back up to speed, getting our BMRs back up, getting our energy conservation to stop, letting our body feel safe in what we're doing. Because realistically, what was it? There was I don't even remember the study name, but your metabolism doesn't actually decline until like around age 60. So I used to be the one who was like, oh, my 30-year-old body doesn't work the same as my 20, like my metabolism's slower. And it wasn't. I had just adapted to years of dieting.
Yeah.
I'm eating the most I ever have, and I'm having trouble gaining weight because my metabolism is just working.
Yeah, it's healthy. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something I see a lot too. And then what I really see a lot as well is that people's hunger cues aren't accurate to their actual needs. And part of that has been ignoring those cues for sure with dieting. But then I know that I really feel like there's actual like physical things that are happening when you have, like you said, blood sugar irregularities related to your diet history. You start to get dysregulation of appetite hormones like leptin and ghrelin, and then
Mhm.
your body's all whacked out on its hunger cues. And so I like to use a more structured approach initially for that reason, as well as like not only are we working on your mindset, but we're actually working on like physical changes around your metabolism
Mhm.
that are making your hunger cues more correct to your needs, like the way an animal in the wild has correct hunger cues because they're eating natural foods in the right amounts, and it's changing and healing their metabolism in that way as well in terms of the actual like metabolic signaling that
Yeah.
they're getting. Yeah.
I love it. And I think of that and I love it. And I'm like, yes, we do that too. But then these are things that we get excited about, right? To teach clients, but then
Yeah.
those aren't sexy, right? Like you can't sell like learn your metabolic cues and
Yeah.
someone
Yeah.
pops up to you. So it's like these are the byproducts of what you'll get from
Yeah.
working with us.
Yeah. What do you think about like the intuitive eating movement in general?
I mean, I think intuitive eating is great. Like that sounds like the ultimate goal, right? Like you just kind of eat when you're hungry, you eat what you want, you stop when you're full. It's awesome. But I will say if I intuitively ate, I would undereat consistently because just working, we get busy. Trust me, I don't forget about eating ever. Like I love eating,
Yeah.
but I happen to if you're stressed, like I've had some food aversions lately, or I get fuller faster than I used to now. I used to really binge eat with snacks. So, like, it's changed over the years. And right now, I find that if I don't track my macros, I will significantly undereat, which is going to not do me any justice. So, I think it depends on the person. I think it's a great movement to try and do, but I think there are necessary steps you have to go through before you, like we kind of said earlier, before you can jump into intuitive eating. And I don't think I don't think you start with a meal plan either. I personally don't love meal plans at all. um, I think it takes a lot of self-learning and self-awareness and like relearning what you thought was true. I don't know. What do you what do you, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think just so like what we talked about, I've had some experiences with like really hardcore intuitive eating guests on this show. Like one I really remember is they were like, well, if you want to eat a bag of peanut M&Ms and you're intuitively feeling like you should do that, then you should do that. And that's intuitive eating. But I think what that doesn't acknowledge is that there is, like what we talked about, there's physical damage to your metabolism that happens over time when you eat foods that are really not natural human foods. And so it's not that we can never have foods that aren't like traditional human foods, but when we, like, let's say you have a car and you're putting the wrong kind of gas in it, you might be able to get away with doing that like a little bit. But if you're consistently putting a full tank of the wrong type of gas,
Right.
your car won't run right. And so you can't trust those instincts if you're getting fueled on foods like that. And unfortunately, I mean, this is kind of an extreme example. I was like at the playground with one of my kids last night, and there was like three little girls there. I mean, I couldn't believe this. This like blew my mind. But like there's like one girl, she looked like she was about 7, was drinking like a canned Starbucks, like cold brew double shot.
Oh my God.
And then the little one that was like 5, she was eating a bag of flaming hot Cheetos. And this is like dinner time. Like I'm like, is this your dinner?
It's gonna be
And
up.
then the little one was like definitely less than 4 because I was there with my 4-year-old. She was younger than him, so maybe like 3. She was sitting there eating a bag of Haribo candies and drinking a Fanta soda. And I'm like, what are these girls? What is the likelihood that they're going to come into like adolescence and adulthood with the ability to eat intuitively. Not only have they not ever even seen natural like human eating, but their body is not even developing in an environment where it's getting provided the opportunity to have natural like appetite signaling. And so I don't think that you can just go up to an adult who potentially probably grew up. I mean, those are extreme examples, but we know that there is like an epidemic of childhood obesity, and like kids in general, like their diets need work, right? And so let's say a child's growing up in an unfavorable food environment around their metabolism, and then their whole life they've been yo-yo dieting from like extreme diet to like binging, and then you ask them to start eating intuitively. It's like you're asking a broken machine to like run like a sports car, It's not up for that task, So I agree, it's an end goal for me. Like I love to like graduate people out of my practice. Like you're eating intuitively, you're healthy, you feel good, your diet is good, and you're not requiring any support to do that. Great. Go enjoy your life and come back if you need anything. So it's like definitely an end goal, but yeah, just to start off is like, that's the whole premise of like, you're just going to start doing that. I think is kind of ridiculous.
I think it's kind of far-fetched and honestly putting a lot of pressure on people when you normally gravitate already towards super sugary, super refined.
They've been trying to eat intuitively. They're trying to like eat well. Like people are trying their crazy to eat well, and they can't do it. Like,
I will be honest, there's so much conflicting information out there. Like just how we're saying, there's the diehard intuitive eaters being like, no, this is the right way. Then there's like the macro trackers, and then there's the keto and the intermittent fasters. And like, there's so many people saying which is the right way and what you should be doing. And I have to tell people like on our intake forms, like, okay, you did keto. Was it successful? Well, it was until like I gained this back. And I was like, so it wasn't successful, right? Like could you give up carbs forever? No, then this is not the diet that we stick with forever, right? And so I think we have to differentiate too with where the disordered eating and stuff comes from with macro tracking, and as well is macros is not a diet, it's a tool. So we can use macros for every other diet. Like you could use macros doing Whole30. You could use macros doing keto. You could use macros doing anything else with a name.
It's just a way of quantifying what you're eating. Yeah.
It's just a way of tracking your energy intake like you would track your finances, right? Like that's kind of how I like to compare it to. So it's just a tool to teach you, to then lead you into making smarter choices in the long term. So if you even spent 6 months tracking your food, I think you would learn such a great deal of information.
Or 1 month even. I mean,
yeah.
If you've never done it, it's like I had people come back after a month, just like, remember when I told you I was eating like some peanut butter every day? It turns out that was 700 calories of peanut butter every day. It's like, well, now you know. Like
my
the more you know.
My favorite's the alcohol realization. Like, I had no idea. And I was like,
yeah. Sad, but true. Yes.
Oh my God.
Well, walk me through, let's get more like just very tactical. Like walk me through, like, let's say I come into your business and I'm getting coaching. It sounds like I'm going to fill out some intake, get paired up with a coach. What happens from there? How often do we meet? What type of app am I using? What are you telling me to eat? Like, what does it all look like?
Yeah. So before we even begin, you will jump on a consultation call with me. So I own the company. I'm in the head coach, but I don't generally take on clients that much anymore just because it's all a lot. And I want to be fair to clients and give them the time that they need. So my assistant coaches are amazing. They all have certifications too, where I don't and they do. So like personal training, all of that. So when you come in, you do a consult call with me. We'll go over your history, your medications, your goals, where you feel you're lacking, things like that. And then if you do sign up, we do intake forms, yes, where we get a little bit more details. And then we have every client who comes in do a 3-day log in MyFitnessPal. So we use MyFitnessPal. It's free. It's easy. We don't want anyone spending like additional money on things. So they'll do a 3-day log. So we'll kind of see where they're already at before they join our program. And then obviously we'll get a feel for how comfortable they are tracking, because you can see like the difference of what's exact and what's not.
For sure.
And then we go from there. So we generally use macros in our program, and we most often than not will have to reverse diet a client. So we'll work on like slowly adding calories over time. We use MyFitnessPal for tracking. We meet once a week, so we do weekly check-ins. Everything is kind of remote and through WhatsApp. So we actually don't do calls or Zooms or anything like that with clients. So we have it set up where it's very, once upon a time, I did it when it was just me, and the scheduling conflicts and the cancellations and the reschedules, I realized that a lot more clients were having to sometimes skip their check-ins because of things that would come up. And then we were kind of backtracking in data. So I found a way to do it with like an online questionnaire that we use every week. And then we go back and forth and chat through voice memos and texting through.
I see. So there's not like a formal meeting. No. It's like they have a deadline to submit the weekly form.
Yep. They have their specific check-in day.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. And so go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say then we'll make adjustments if we need to update their training protocols, if they're doing training, make any adjustments to gut health situations. Like every client's going to be different with what we recommend for them, or supplements if they do need anything.
But got it. Okay. So then what are you telling them to do in terms of like what to eat?
So we have them, I like just had a brain fart. So we do kind of like I forgot to even mention the first 2 weeks of the program, we do a slower start to getting started. So we focus more on, we don't use macros yet. It's kind of a meal plan, but it's not a meal plan because I don't love meal plans, and it's not very specific for calorie needs or like eat 12 almonds and whatever. But we give them some breakfast options. We kind of use the plate method, and we focus more on a lot of vegetables, 3 meals, 2 snacks, and kind of getting them in the groove of eating consistently every few hours and choosing healthier foods. And then once we get to macros, we try to build off of that. So see what you were eating. Like this is where you need to add more protein, subtract fat, work from there. And then they kind of then get to experiment with adding in their own foods and how it lines up, how to play Tetris with macros, right? Sure. That's what I like to call it, like how to meet your numbers. So we meet the client where they're at. If they don't eat healthy at all and they're like, I absolutely hate all vegetables, like we have to start real slow. Otherwise, we can jump in with more focus towards nutrients right away.
And I guess so the way it works is like your coach would like log into their MyFitnessPal and look at what they're doing and see that. Yes. I see. Okay. And then do you have where like they focus on like their daily macros, or do you focus more on like an average across the week? Like how do you do that?
So during check-ins, we do averages just because it's easier to see, but then we also do the calorie amount averages so we can see like the bar graph of how successful they were and if it's messing up their averages. We do not promote borrowing over days. So like if you were low one day, don't make up for it the next day. Like just get back to your macros. Yeah. If you were high one day, don't cut your next day short. So we do focus on averages, but only to see how close you came. Otherwise, like we want you to hit everything every day.
Yeah, got it. And then what about, how do you decide on the macros? I mean, I know there's a lot to that, but give me a general idea of like, you probably aren't just using what MyFitnessPal auto generates. Like, what do you do?
That would be like 1,200 calories for everyone.
Yeah.
So the way that we do macros, and like I've done a ton of content on this, so it's not like I'm gatekeeping secrets, but we will calculate the client's total daily energy expenditure using like the equations or an online calculator. We will see how the client presents to us and their diet history, because that calculator doesn't take into effect any data like health issues, diet history, metabolism, it does take body fat, but most people don't know their body fat. So we will see how they come to us and see where they're supposed to be, and then make recommendations that way. So protein depends on body fat. So I'm not going to give everyone 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight if our body fat percentage is 25% or more, right? Fat is usually 30% of calories, unless we're dealing with more of like an insulin resistant type of situation, that it will be a little more, and carbs are the rest.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds pretty good. And then how do you feel like it goes for people over time? Do you think that like sticking to macros is the most game-changing thing for them? Or do you think it's the change in their diet? Or do you think it's more kind of just having that weekly support? Like, what do you think is the real magic in all this?
I think it's a combination. So the lot of feedback that we get is, I can't believe I get to eat this and still reach my goals, or I can't believe like I am eating so much and am losing weight. Or so I think it's like just the understanding of, you need fuel, like you need food and fuel. So the macros definitely help, because otherwise they wouldn't have gotten there. Because how are you supposed to increase calories for someone if they're not tracking? Like you have to kind of do a meal plan and eat the same thing and just add more each week, which is super boring and no one's going to do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's the macros, and I think it's the real life flexibility, because like you said, you want to go to your kid's birthday party and eat cake. You want to have like a glass of wine every once in a while. Like, yes, we want to be healthy, but that also includes like mental wellness and being able to be social. And
yeah. Tell me a little bit about reverse dieting and like weight gain. Like, tell me how you handled the freak out when they gained some weight initially, and that was like their whole goal is to stop being overweight, and then they're gaining weight with you. Tell me about that whole story.
So right away, like, yes, we include weight in our check-ins, but if it becomes like kind of an obsessive number, like we try and shift the focus off of the scale. Like we'll try and go more towards how you're feeling, how your clothes are fitting, measurements and pictures. We do those too. So reverse dieting has a typical weight gain of like 2 to 4 pounds. And simply because you're eating more food, which is in your stomach, and water retention from carbs, right? A lot of times we actually see clients lose weight on reverse dieting. And I think it's also because, one of the reasons could be they're underreporting what they're actually eating, and now they're actually in a calorie deficit.
Yeah.
And 2, they've just never fed themselves correctly. And so now we're kind of like dropping that stress response, the cortisol response, like everything will get back to working the way it's supposed to. And now we're higher functioning. So we actually see a lot more weight loss and body recomposition with reverse dieting. The scale may even stay the same, but they're losing 3 inches in their waist and they're happy.
I use a similar approach. I explain to them it's not all weight is body fat.
I have had a couple of clients, like you said, who they've done the most to their body, right? Like long history of like cutting out carbs, fasting, like doing all the things at once, where it's just, they do gain like 10 pounds in a reverse diet. And it's like, they don't love it, but like, that's what your body needs right now to feel safe. And we can like kind of heal. And it is a very mentally hard concept to grasp. But if they stick it out, it does wonders. It's just kind of like really having the faith in the process that it will work out.
Yeah. I'm thinking about one I have right now where it's like, what do you do when where you're doing this, but then they're not hitting their goals? Like they're coming in low consistently. How do you deal with that?
I just talked to one of my coaches about this last night in our meeting, because it was happening too. So obviously you can't change macros if they're not hitting them, right? And if you're trying to increase macros and they're consistently coming in low, I'll do 2 things. One, I'll address like the fear of actually hitting those macros, because kind of sometimes you'll find that they're afraid to eat those macros because they think they're going to gain weight. So there is a little bit of like, I'm purposely under eating.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So we'll address that and we'll go into that. And then 2, sometimes I'll just increase them anyway, because even if they're still hitting lower than what I'm now increasing them to, it's the old numbers. So now we're finally like going up again. So sometimes I'll do it as like a challenge, but ultimately finding out like the goal of why they're not hitting them, and then working that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Well, this has been super interesting. I feel like we could talk all day. It's fun to chat with you. And I think that nutrition can be like, people are attracted to simple, right? And so I think people are interested in getting into very extreme things in nutrition can be attractive. Like, you're very strict on a certain dietary pattern, like you're a carnivore, you're a vegan, or with macros, you're very strict on macros and you don't worry anything about the food you eat. Those are extremes that you would think would be unattractive to people. But I think it's like the idea that there's like this Occam's razor is so like enticing to people, that you could just find this one thing and like that's it, and then like life is good, the clouds part, the sun shines, and like everything's perfect. But I think we've both arrived to a similar place in the sense of like the truth is somewhere in the middle. And it can be that when you focus on your food quality and then you start to quantify how much of the different macronutrients you're having, that's really what I find to be like the best place to start getting people improvements in their health.
Yes.
Getting improvements in their mental health around their food, and then trying to like advance from there to where they take more ownership of and independence over it. So I love that we were able to chat about that.
You know what's great? I love what you just said. Like, people gravitate towards simple, but then we make this so complex. Like, if we're gravitating really towards simple, then the things that we preach that are super boring but actually help, like getting sleep, increasing your water, food quality, movement, it's super simple. But we don't do the simple things. We're like, I'm going to go super restrictive and eat 1,000 calories and do HCG and like,
yeah. And then I guess another myth, not to get back all into it, but another myth I see a lot with macros is like, well, I just don't have time to be like spending hours a day tracking my food and everything. But I mean, I'm like, look, and once you get used to doing this, it's like what, maybe 10 minutes out of your day? How much time do you think it takes?
3. I've timed it one time just to be like, it saves all your recent foods too. So
I'm like, exactly. If it's taking more than 10 minutes a day, you need more repetition in your diet.
We're getting too fancy, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, it was so fun. I appreciate you coming on, Ashley. And it looks like if people want to learn more about you, the best way is they can head over to your website. It's the bigdaynutrition.com, and we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, or I think the same thing for teambdncoaching.com works.
teambdncoaching.com. Okay.
It's the same. We changed it over.
Cool.
And then I don't think I put this in there, but if they want Instagram too, you could do @Dr. Dwyer.
Cool.
Is good for content or just random fun reels.
Awesome.
I don't know if you've had to get into like the content creator mode now on Instagram.
I do a little bit, but we are insurance based, so that kind of saves me from a lot of that. We kind of have more clients we can handle, so I'm like, okay, phew, I don't have to make a bunch of reels.
Got it. Good for you.
It's not that I hate it. I don't know. It's hard to get it to the top of my to-do list. So yeah. Awesome, Ashley. It was so nice to meet you. We'll put this episode out, and I know a lot of people will benefit from it. It's been a very interesting discussion around just avoiding, I think, my big takeaway is avoiding overly polarized approaches with nutrition. And you shared a great example of the harm that can cause. And I had a similar experience, actually. So thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome. It was such a great chat. Thank you.
Talk to you later.
All right. Bye.